Good morning, fourth graders. Today we are starting our new unit, Lesson 4.1, Decimal Place Value. The goal of our lesson is to extend the base 10 place value system to include decimals. Before we get started with this unit, we need to set our goals. In front of you, you should have this goal setting sheet as well as your pretest. Just like in the past, you're going to look through your pretest and see which learning targets you did not answer some correctly in and set a goal around that. So for example, let's say that I had these two either crossed off on my test saying I got them wrong, or some teachers circled them if they were incorrect. Whichever one it is, it does not have a star by it because a star means you got it right. So if I had these two learning targets incorrect, let's set a goal around it. I can write two numbers between two whole numbers, or I can write numbers between two whole numbers, and I can order the decimals and compare their sizes using less than, greater than, or equal to. So let me put this aside, and it says, what is my goal? My goal for Unit 4 is to write, and I could jot out, write decimals in order, or compare their sizes, or write the numbers between two whole numbers. Why don't you turn and talk? What would a good goal be that I could write for this learning target? Okay, the second part then is how will you get there? So now that we set our goal, how are you going to reach your goal? To reach my goal, I will. What are some things you might write down that you can do to help reach your goal? Third, how will I know I reached my goal? So how will I know that I achieved this? And the fourth part, we do not do yet. We do that at the end of the unit. Before we get started, now that you have your goal for the unit, turn back to the goal for the day and jot down what is your goal for today. Alright, on these number lines, we're going to be filling in the missing numbers. So this one goes from 0 through 10, and 7 is here. What are my missing numbers? Good, so on this one I'm counting up just by ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then take a look here. There's a bracket going from 0 to 1, and it's saying this next number line, we're going to spread out that 0 to 1 in this whole number line. There's 10 spaces here. So if we divide the number 1 into 10 spaces, it means we're counting up by tenths. Who can count up by tenths to fill in the missing numbers? Right, so we have 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 8 tenths, 9 tenths. Now on the next one, we're just going from 0 to 1, and we're again going to take 0 to 1 and stretch it out over 10 spaces. In other words, we're dividing 1/10 by 10. When we divide 1/10 by 10, we're into the hundredths. Who can count from 0 to 1/10 by hundredths? Okay, let's get that jotted down. So we have 0, and then we have 1/100th, so 0.01, 2/100ths, 3/100ths, 4/100ths, 5/100ths, 6/100ths, 7/100ths, 8/100ths, 9/100ths, and 10/100ths, which is the same as 1/10. We're going to make it even smaller now, smaller increments. Now we're just going from 0 to 100th, dividing that by 10, so we're counting it by thousandths. So we have 0.001, which is 1,000th, 2 thousandths, 3 thousandths, 4 thousandths, 5 thousandths, 6 thousandths, 7 thousandths, 8 thousandths, 9 thousandths, and 10 thousandths, which is the same as 1/100th. We're going to take this and do some practicing with our numbers. So we know this is the thousands place, this is the hundreds, the tens, the ones, and then we have our decimal point. Anything to the right of the decimal point always ends in THS, like tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So we call this the Thisville. So welcome to Thisville. Let's go ahead and label these then. If these are the ones, here we have the tenths, we have the hundredths, and lastly we have the thousandths. And we know that this is 1, so tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Going from left to right, each of these divide by 10. We found that pattern in the chart before. So 1/10 to 1/100th, divide by 10. 1/100th divided by 10 is 1,000th. So let's jot down a number here, and I'm going to ask you to read it. So if I wrote down 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. The decimal point means we say and. So here we have 9,876, and then we read this like a normal hundreds number because there are 3 numbers. So 543 thousandths. Who thinks they can read this number now? Okay, let's try another one. What if we did 112.76? Now we're ending in the hundredths place. Who can read this number? What if I had 767.12? Here I end in the hundredths place, so what number do I have here? Good, and let's try one more. I'm going to put 1 in the tenths, 3 in the hundredths, 4 in the thousandths place, and let's have 98 before it. Who can read this number? We can do some comparing of decimals when looking at money as well. So, if we said that this was our chart for our decimals, the dime could represent our tenths, and the penny could be our hundredths. Oops, ran out of room there. So here's our decimal point. So if I had 0.97 compared to 0.79, we could look here and know, oh, 9 is in the tenths, so that's like 9 dimes and 7 pennies. We know that's larger than 7 dimes and 9 pennies. The whole numbers then are like our dollar bills or our $10 bills. We'll come back to this later, but if you want to be comparing it to some money, remember that tenths is just like a dime. Hundredths is just like using a penny. And your whole numbers are your dollar bills. A final resource that you can use is right here in our room. We have our place value, and we used this earlier in the year. Here's our ones, tens, hundreds, comma, thousands, 10,000, 100,000s, comma, millions. But now we've added in, here's our decimal place, and we head over to the Thisville, and we have the tenths, we have the hundredths, and we have the thousand. All right, today in math then, you're going to be working on reading and writing decimals and identifying their place values. You'll do this by completing page 78 in your math journal, which is place value number lines. We did this exact page during our lesson today. Then you're going to do math boxes 4.1. Most of us already completed this, but remember that you need to have 3A through 3D checked with your teacher. Finally, you're going to do polygon pair up, which uses the reference book and a Math Masters 496. When you go on to the blend space, we're going to pause here. There's a couple of directions we need to remind you about for the blend space.